Today we're going to look at the failure of this movable wall-mounted boom arm bracket and look at the failure reasons and come up with a new design. Hopefully one that works. Hi, Harley here. If you're new and are interested in making things out of wood, metal, electronics, and other similar types of materials, hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell notification, and YouTube will let you know next time there's something released here at the House of Hacks. You know, sometimes you have a great idea, but the execution of it just doesn't work quite right. Well, that's what happened last summer. I made a video up here about making a movable wall-mounted bracket for this impact 7-foot boom arm that's used in a photography studio. And the idea was we'd have a piece of metal that's mounted to the wall, and this bracket could be mounted anywhere along that metal to provide adjustability for where the long arm boom arm is mounted. Well, the idea was there'd be a couple pins here that drop it into holes in the metal, and there's a cam activated lock here that keeps it from shifting around while it's being used. There are a couple problems with this design. First of all, the pins that were epoxied in place in here didn't have enough depth to them into the wood, and so they fell out fairly easily. The second problem is this cam lock is asymmetrical in the way that it was providing support. The boom arm can swing to give you adjustability on your position of whatever you have mounted to it. And if you swung one way, this worked fine. But if you swung it the other way, the whole mounting bracket would have a tendency to tilt because it didn't have support on both sides. So in this redesign, I'm going to address both those issues. Okay, the new game plan is to replace the pins that fell out with some bolts that will go through the wood all the way. The bolts are longer than this wood, and so the bottom of the bolt will drop into the holes in the perforated tubing that will be on the wall to hold it in place. To hold the bolt into the wood, I've got some T-nuts that will just go in like so. So it'll be flush on the bottom where it mounts against the wood or against the metal, and it'll just be held in like so. To lock it in place, I've got some toggle clamps. These are inexpensive. I picked them up on Amazon, a 4-pack for less than $9. I was really surprised that I could get some this inexpensively. And I'll leave a link to it down in the description in case you're interested in something like this. They're rated at 100 pounds each, so it should be, I'll have two, one on each side, so that should be able to hold it in without any problem. I'll cut a couple pieces of wood this size to mount on each side here to mount this to, and I'll set the spacing such that when they're open there's enough room to drop it into place, and when it's closed it will lock up tight against the metal on the wall. So let's start putting this all together. Okay, after I got the bolts in and tried test fitting it in the holes, the clearances were just such that there was a little bit more interference than I would have liked. And so I took the bolts off and put them on the lathe and just filed off the ends of the bolts. Where I see it there a little bit better with the contrast. So the part of the bolt that sticks out of the T-nut is filed off, but the threads that thread into the T-nut are still there. So it will still go in just fine this way. And as this gets bottomed out and tightened up, we can see there's just enough extra room for those to fit in there just fine. So now go put this back on the mounting bracket and figure out where the toggle clamps go. So I mounted the clamp on the bolt such that the fixed part of the clamp is fairly flush with the end of the bolt. There's some adjustability in here, so I wasn't looking for exact precision, just kind of got in the ballpark. And the bolts that are coming out of the T-nuts, extending beyond, is less than the total throw of this bolt on the latch. So the difference between here, the closed position, and the open position is a certain measurement, and that measurement is greater than the length of the bolts that are extending out the bottom of the T-nuts. So in theory, I should be able to set one of these clamps in the locked position and put it right up here against the perforated pipe and mark the block's position here on the mounting bracket. And when this is mounted in, when it's closed, it should be locked, and when it unlocks, there should be enough movement to be able to pull the bracket up off the perforated pipes. That's the theory. We'll put it together and hopefully everything works out. Okay, I'm much more pleased with the way this works. It's much more sturdy, seems a lot more secure. I think it's going to work much better. As you may have noticed, I was making some adjustments to this. The way this works is there's a barrel that moves in and out in this bushing, and in the end of the barrel there's a screw that has a rubber tip on it and a lock nut so you can adjust the length of the screw that's coming out of it with the rubber bumper on it, and then you can lock it in place with the lock nut. And that's what I was doing with the pliers, was just kind of getting that tightened down and adjusting that. So now when you lock it in place, there's just a little tiny bit of resistance before it locks in, and so it holds it pretty secure. And I did that on both sides. Like I said, these are rated on the website at, I think, 99 pounds force that they should take, so both of them combined is 200 pounds, and that should be plenty sufficient, I think, even with the leverage that this will have when you put a light on it. But we won't know until we really get in place in the studio. So let's head over to the studio and see how it works in real life. Okay, that looks like it's going to work pretty well. It's a whole lot more sturdy than it was before, particularly when it's out on the outer edges, which is really where we had the problem last time. Like I said last time, it would have a tendency to torque this base sideways when it was out at the far angles, and not having any problem like that now. It's just really good and solid. So I think this is going to work. We'll now put it in practice, leave it here in the studio and let people use it and see how it really works in the real world. Hopefully this will be the last time I have to address this issue. Thanks for joining me on this creative journey that we're all on. Until next time, go make something. Perfection's not required, fun is.